Good morning, everyone. The good news is we're going to try that again because I know we can do way better than that. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Much better. My name is Jeff McKay. I'm the president of the Virginia Association of Counties, and it's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome you to the opening general session of the 87th VACo Annual Conference. And isn't it great to be back together? And I sure hope everyone is rested and raring to go because we have a full fun day planned of events. And as you experience the annual conference over the next couple of days, please remember that this conference is designed to energize you, the local leaders on the front lines, with information, statistics, new friendships, and relationships to serve your constituents better. And we certainly know local governments have been on the front lines during a very difficult period of time. And so it is just great to get out and enjoy each other's company. As we begin this opening general session at this time, I would like to introduce the proud Norfolk Police Honor Guard. And so if you could please rise as the Honor Guard presents the colors. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
How about a round of applause for our Norfolk Police Honor Guard? I would now like to introduce our first speaker this morning, who I know everyone is excited to hear from and has been very busy on Capitol Hill working on behalf of Virginia and local governments. Senator Tim Kaine was elected to the Senate in 2012 and serves on the Armed Services, Budget, Foreign Relations, and Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committees. And Senator Kaine has made boosting job opportunities throughout Virginia a top priority. He was first elected to office in 1994, serving as a city council member and then mayor of Richmond. He became lieutenant governor in 2002 and was inaugurated as Virginia's 70th governor in 2006. He's married to Ann Holton, who served as Virginia Secretary of Education from 2014 to 2016. And they both revel in the adventures of their three grown children and live in the same North Side Richmond neighborhood where they moved as newlyweds more than 30 years ago. And I think most important to us, Tim's experience in local government, what he has been able to do for us in terms of getting federal money and having an open door policy to meet with local elected officials and to engage with VACo and help us at the federal level, help us at the local level, serve our constituents through some of the most challenging times any of us have ever experienced. Please join me in welcoming Senator Tim Kaine.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Please have a seat. I am absolutely thrilled to be with my friends at VACo. And Jeff, thank you for your kind introduction, and to VACo for inviting me to come be with you today. I come from local government. People ask me all the time, what's a better job, governor or senator? And I said, I like them all, but if you made me give up every title that I've ever had except one, I would say mayor and give up all of the others. because local government is where the rubber meets the road. If I'm good at anything in politics, it's because I was in local government. And if I hadn't been a city councilman and mayor, I never would have been anything else. So I'm really, really happy to be able to come and be with you today. And especially glad to be with you in person. The last 20 months, it's kind of been like Twilight Zone time. And I know VACo missed the opportunity to be together for your annual conference last year. I've interacted with VACo a lot since March of 2020 on Zoom sessions, talking about various pieces of federal legislation that we were thinking about and how we could do them in ways that would help our cities and counties and towns in the state. But to be together in person is very, very good. When we're all finished with our time in public life, when all of us are done with our time in public life, here's what I think. We're going to look back on the time beginning in March 2020 as the most important part of our public service careers. The pandemic has created such destruction, death. Ann and I know 10 people who died of COVID. We both have had COVID. And like you, other friends have died and we couldn't go to their funerals, or kids have been born and we couldn't go visit them. And you've all experienced the same thing. The death, the economic catastrophe, the illness, the division. You've all been tested. You've all been tested in your personal lives, and you've especially been tested in your work on behalf of your citizens. You've been tested as never before. People in your counties, they always need you, but they've needed you in unparalleled ways since March of 2020. And I want to thank you as I start for all you've done to rise to that challenge. I've been asked to speak this morning as somebody with roots in local government on what's going on in Congress. Well, how much time do you have? And I'm going to speak really slowly because the Senate operates really slowly. There's so much going on right now in Congress that can affect all of us. Many issues on the table right now: annual appropriations negotiations, an upcoming debate this week about the National Defense Authorizing Bill. I'm on the Armed Services Committee. We're going to be talking about war powers legislation that I have, a rehash of a discussion about how to manage the nation's debt, voting rights, a lot of things on the table. In fact, I told my chief of staff on November 1 that the time between November 1 and January 31 is likely to be the busiest 2 months of my entire public service career, no matter if it's decades in the future before I stop. I have a feeling November 1 to December 31, 2021 is going to be the most intense. But I want to limit my remarks because there's so many things I could talk about. There are 3 things that I think are the biggest in terms of impact to local governments in Virginia and elsewhere. First, the American Rescue Plan that passed in March and is just beginning to have an impact on Virginia and its local governments. 2, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that will be signed at the White House today. And 3, the education and workforce bill that we're working on now that I believe will reach the president's desk in December. American Rescue Plan. We passed the American Rescue Plan on a cold Saturday in March. It passed by 1 vote in the Senate. It contained 4 significant pillars to help us get through the pandemic: healthcare, family relief, business relief, and aid to state and local governments, including sizable funding for education. Within a month after passage, I took a tour around Virginia. I did a Route 58 tour, and I just stopped in jurisdictions along the way to talk about how jurisdictions were thinking about using the state and local government money. It was very early. And since April, I've come back and met with counties and cities all over Virginia. How are you thinking about using the American Rescue Plan dollars that are coming your way? You've seen the effects of this aid already to families, stimulus checks. You've seen the effect to healthcare institutions. You've seen the effect to businesses of being able to get PPP loans. I remember within a week after passage, I was in Damascus, Virginia, in Washington County, and the Bank of Damascus had big bold on the marquee, PPP loans are back. You've seen the effects of those loans on your businesses. These investments, they kept families afloat. They helped them protect themselves against COVID, and they kept the lights on in our community's employers. But you particularly, as local officials, you saw the effects of the state and local government aid, $7.2 billion of funding to Virginia and its localities. I've traveled around and I've said, and I've talked to you about how you're using those dollars. And I've watched carefully and talked to Governor Northam and the General Assembly about the way they are using those monies. The effect is going to be transformative, advancing long-delayed capital projects, water and wastewater upgrades, closing the digital divide by investing in broadband, community center construction, hazard pay to first responders, grants to local nonprofits and churches that have supported the community during COVID, grants to shore up Virginia businesses engaged in the tourism industry that's been hit particularly hard since March of 2020. These investments in you, $7.2 billion to state and localities in Virginia, have been supplemented by more than $3.5 billion to Virginia child care providers, K-12 school systems, community colleges, and four-year institutions, and billions more in the American Rescue Plan for transit, for airports, for broadband, critical to your community's well-being. I have been particularly impressed as I've traveled around and met with many jurisdictions about the way you have come at the challenge of how do we use these funds. Many of you decided to wait until the state had allocated its funds so that you wouldn't do something and then find the state come back and doing the same thing. That's important. Many of you used innovative, like public dialogue with community stakeholders to say, okay, these are one-time dollars. We want them to be transformative. How should we program them? And I've learned a lot, actually, as I've seen the way our cities and counties have engaged the public around programming these dollars. I think the American Rescue Plan is one of the things that I'll end up being proudest of, because at a critical time during the midst of this challenge, it provided such significant good to so many in every zip code in this country, and certainly in the Commonwealth. When I finish the speech today, I can't even stay around and visit because I'm racing to the White House for President Biden's signing of the bipartisan infrastructure bill, the second thing I want to talk about. I was proud to work very hard on this bill and to support it. As a governor who wanted to do more infrastructure than I was able to, I see Larry Roberts, who was part of my cabinet. We always were fighting about how could we get more infrastructure done. This investment in infrastructure, I believe, will be the biggest commitment to the nation's infrastructure since we did the interstate highway system during the Eisenhower administration. I was very proud to work on this. There's a piece of this bill that deals with the role of our historically Black colleges and universities in infrastructure workforce training. I worked on that piece of the bill with Roger Wicker, Senator of Mississippi. I got to give special thanks, though, to the person who I think is the unsung hero, really, of the infrastructure bill, and that's Mark Warner, who was really the key to the negotiation. The impact of this bill will be felt in Virginia for generations. Billions for roads and bridges, ports and dredging, critically important right here near the Port of Virginia, rail, trails. I was on a fantastic rail to trail in Allegheny County Saturday with my wife, hiking the Jackson River Scenic Trail. There's dollars in this bill that can be used at the discretion of state and local governments. If they decide they want to do rail to trail projects, they can use dollars for that. Climate resiliency investments, broadband, energy grid modernization, building out a system to charge electric vehicles, public transit, waste and wastewater infrastructure, Chesapeake Bay cleanup, investments in the Appalachian Regional Commission for infrastructure in that important region of our Commonwealth and country. These dollars are mostly allocated to states so that Virginia can prioritize the use of the funds to tackle the most important projects here at home, because the Virginia priorities are not going to be the same as the Kansas priorities or the Alaska priorities. So my one piece of advice to you as county officials, you've got to be at the table with the General Assembly and with the incoming Youngkin administration. And I've spoken to Governor-elect Youngkin about this. You've got to be at the table to make sure that your needs and your priorities and your projects are understood, because whether it's the Commonwealth Transportation Board or DHCD or other state agencies, they will have significant ability to allocate these dollars. The General Assembly obviously will be critical as well. And it's important, now that we've come up with the money at the federal level, it's really important that the state uses it in the way to best advance your priorities. Let me just give you some Virginia figures, and this is just some because all of the allocations haven't yet been decided, but some Virginia figures from this infrastructure bill. We'll receive a minimum of $100 million for affordable broadband. Every state receives a $100 million allocation, but the total broadband investment is $65 billion. So the Virginia share is likely to be multiples higher than the minimum of $100 million. We'll receive $2.7 billion for transit, including WMATA. We'll receive $7.6 billion for roads and bridges. I know you all have capital improvement plans. I know you have water and wastewater projects on them that have often been just bumped down year after year after year because they're expensive. I know you have road and bridge projects that you want to get done. We'll receive billions to do those investments. And other priorities will be allocated as well, and they'll be sizable. As I've said, this is the biggest commitment to infrastructure we've made since the interstate highway system was built. It's going to employ hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people over the build-out, and it will raise the platform for economic success for decades. That's the great thing. That's the great thing about infrastructure investments. They're doubles. You know, you employ people right away to build, but then once you've raised the platform with better broadband, better roads, better ports, better airports, then you enjoy the fruit of that investment, sometimes for 50 or 60 or 70 years. Finally, the pending debate about the third bill, the one that is still in the windshield and not in the rearview mirror. Some call this the Build Back Better bill. Some call it the Reconciliation bill. I don't like either of those titles, so I have my own. I call it I'm a member of the Budget Committee, and we worked on this framework, and I'm a member of the Health, Education, Labor, Pension Committee, who has done a lot of the programming. I call it the Education and Workforce Bill. Why not call it exactly what it is? Reconciliation, if you don't know insider Senate budget speak, what does that mean? Build Back Better means sounds great, but what does it mean? Education and workforce, that's what this bill is about at its core. It's fundamentally about preparing America's workforce for today and tomorrow and making sure that the American workforce has the training and the childcare and the housing and the healthcare to outcompete any country in the world. Why do an education and workforce bill right now? We just, we're going to have the bill signing date on infrastructure. Why not just, take a rest for a while? Our infrastructure doesn't build itself. I mean, if we're going to make a once in a lifetime investment in infrastructure, you're reading the stories about the labor market. It's a tight labor market right now. So we're going to decide to invest in infrastructure and not do anything to invest in a pro-infrastructure workforce? We would waste the infrastructure investment if we made that investment but didn't train the workforce to carry out these investments over the next years and decades. We're not going to outcompete China just by tariffs and diplomacy and tough talk. We're going to outcompete China by making sure our workforce is dramatically better prepared to succeed in the 21st century than any other workforce in the world. Some examples for what's in this education and workforce bill. We'll provide funding to allow states to make pre-kindergarten for 3- and 4-year-olds universally available in a mixed delivery model that supports high quality public and private education providers. For every working parent anywhere in this Commonwealth, the struggle to find affordable, high quality childcare is a huge burden. Investing in pre-K not only helps kids, it helps gets parents back into the workforce, and we will provide funding, and the states can choose whether or not to accept it. But if the states do accept it, it will fully fund universally available pre-K for every 3- and 4-year-old. Additionally, we will fund high quality childcare, again, in public and private settings, church-based settings, YMCAs, Head Starts, Boys and Girls Clubs, as well as public schools like the VPI program that Virginia Public Schools runs. And by investing in high quality childcare, we'll bring down costs for working families. When our kids get a strong start, it puts them on a brighter path for the rest of their life. And by expanding affordable childcare options, we're going to be able to bring many more talented adults into the workforce. There will be sizable investments in our community colleges. What a great thing. My father-in-law just passed, 98 years old. Governor Linwood Holton died 2 weeks ago. His nemesis in politics was Mills Godwin. He ran against him and lost to Governor Godwin in 1965. My father-in-law was a Republican. Mills Godwin was a Democrat. And then Mills Godwin took over the Republican Party and succeeded my father-in-law as a Republican. And he always viewed Mills as a nemesis. But my father-in-law had a generosity of spirit. He always said about Mills Godwin, built the community college system, built the community college system. It's one of the great assets in Virginia. You all have community college campuses within a few miles of the communities where you live. 260,000 people in our community colleges. It went from 0 to 260,000 since basically the mid-60s to now. We're going to make sizable investments in our community colleges to train workers for the infrastructure jobs we need. We're going to train the next generation of K-12 teachers to stand before our kids in classrooms and make sure they're prepared for the economy ahead. We're going to train to enable Americans to lead the world in a new and innovative clean energy economy. We'll expand Pell Grants to make college a little more affordable to low-income students. Plus, we have a child tax credit. If you are a family with children, you will get a tax credit of $300 a month up to a certain income level that you can use to lighten the burden on your own pocket of the child care costs or the cost of housing or the cost of food or educational expenses. We've already done that in the American Rescue Plan. The workforce and education bill will continue it. I believe this bill, when we pass it, is going to be the most pro-family and pro-child bill Congress will have ever passed, in the same way that the infrastructure bill will be the biggest advance on infrastructure since the Eisenhower administration. I think this bill is going to do for children what Social Security did for seniors. Dramatically improve their quality of life. Now, I've said the other two, we passed American Rescue Plan, and we're doing the bill signing on infrastructure today. I've got to say about the education and workforce bill that it is not yet a done deal. And if you followed the news, it's been like watching paint dry. It has been painfully slow. We've got to get there. But I'm confident we will, even though a lot of the details are still being hammered out. I'm deeply wrapped up in the negotiations on this bill, and I'm confident that we'll make it. And whatever the top line number or whatever the details, there will be some things in it, oh, I wish we had done more. And there will be some things that, well, I would have done that rather than that. And all of us are going to have that basic reaction. But the total package, especially when you combine it with the rescue plan and the infrastructure bill, I think is going to be transformative. All right, let me make one last point as I close. And this is a little non-standard for me to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. The American Rescue Plan passed the Senate by 1 vote. If either Mark Warner or I had lost our last elections, that bill would have failed. It would have failed. None of the state and local monies, none of them would have come to Virginia. Every single Democrat in Congress voted for the American Rescue Plan, and every single Republican opposed it. The infrastructure bill, bipartisan infrastructure bill, but let's be honest, virtually every congressional Democrat voted for it, and virtually every congressional Republican voted against it. In Virginia, it was completely stark. This infrastructure bill we'll celebrate today won the vote of every Democrat in the Virginia delegation, but it was opposed by every Republican in the Virginia delegation. And on the education and workforce bill, I have a prediction. I'm not a betting person. I don't like betting, but this is a bet. If any of you are betting people, you could make this bet and you'll win. Based on the very clear comments from the 2 Republican leaders, Mitch McConnell, who I work with very well, and Kevin McCarthy in the House, the education and workforce bill will pass with only Democratic votes. Once again, if Mark and I, either of us, had lost our last elections, the bill would be a dead duck. Why do I mention this at all? I'll tell you why. I get very tired at a line that I hear repeated very often. Democrats don't care about rural America. Democrats don't care about rural Virginia. Who's fighting to fund your businesses and schools, to train your workforce, to build out your transportation network, to support your hospitals and health clinics, to accelerate vaccinations, to provide additional funding to your law enforcement officers, to create better broadband connectivity, to provide tax relief to working families, to lower child care costs? And we're going to keep doing it. I see a big uplift coming. It's an uplift that I see signified by hundreds of people gathered in this room right now. As we exit the toughest chapter in my 63 years on this planet, I see a big uplift coming. And I'm honored to be your partner for progress as we move ahead, both as a Commonwealth and as a country. Thanks so much for having me today.